Hi, everyone. This is Aaron, AG7GK. Just a couple more minutes. It looks like we've gotten a lot of very recent people joining. I put everybody on mute, and we'll go over just kind of how to use Zoom. Not in depth, but enough that we should be able to kind of work out, getting my attention if you have questions and things like that. So I've got everybody right now on mute, and then I will probably switch to my video so you can see my ugly mug, and then we'll get started. Just one more minute. All right, so I should be showing my video. Let's see. Well, I don't know. I'm on my other one, but I'm not sharing. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Stop share. All right. Sorry, guys. I got like 3 different devices going on. So I'll be looking at 4 different screens. I've got my phone that I'm using for my video, and then the computer that I'll be sharing the PowerPoint and screens on, and then a tablet just so I can see how it's working. And it looks like it froze up. So if anybody does have a problem, feel free, just to chat me. I'll have the chat up. And so we are recording this meeting, and we were asked to be able to post this on our Facebook. So if anybody has a problem with that, I guess you can raise your hand and bail, because we're going to record it. Someone asked for it from like Australia, so that kind of sounded fun. So we've got a pretty good crew here. We've got 43 people joined, and I probably have about 14 slides, and we'll do some demos. And I think what we'll do, as this is my first kind of not being in the room, I think what we'll do is we'll go kind of couple slides at a time, and when there's a natural pause, I'll unmute all of you, which I can do quickly from the keyboard. But if you have a question, you should see, and I'm going to just go over the Zoom controls real quick. So if you have your Zoom up, you should see something along the lines of the little chat bubble, and that allows you to chat everyone or me directly. If you want to chat me directly, you would use the Aaron Jones co-host. If you want to send me an APRS message during the duration of this call, you'll go to AG7GK-7. If you don't know how to do that, well, we'll be talking about that. I don't have the polling feature, so unfortunately we can't do that. It's not working for me. If you need to ask a question, of course you can do the chat, or you can also, I want to say there's a way you can like raise your hand, and I'm not exactly seeing where. Oh yeah, so you can clap or raise your hand, and I don't know exactly what it's going to do. Hopefully it'll show me that I raised my hand on my other device.
Click on the unmute and say something.
And I'll unmute. Oh yeah, I see Dudley raised his hand. So you know, we'll muddle our way through this, and definitely I'll unmute and mute you guys whenever it comes up. So, and some of you are catching on. You could rename yourself, and I'd love it if you did. If you could rename yourself, you could say, hey, you know, put your call sign, and if you have like a location or a grid square, that would be kind of fun, just so that we actually have a record of our ham little things. If you're not ham, no big deal, right? You don't have to do that, but just put, you know, Mesa, Arizona or something. So without further ado, I think what I'll do is get started, make sure I still have everything turned on, and then I'll stop this video. Now I'm going to leave it on and go ahead and start sharing my screen. So, all right. Yeah, so I've got a third screen that I can see that I'm actually sharing on. So this is, you know, this started as just a kind of inquiry to our local Sunday night net, and had quite a few of our folks on there. We have probably 25 to 35 people on any given Sunday night here in Mesa, Arizona. And the question was, you know, who wants to learn more about APRS? I do not pretend to be an expert. Just a real, you know, brief overview. The agenda is going to be, we already went over our Zoom conference. We are recording. I'm going to go into what is APRS, talk about some equipment. I am going to go ahead and use my camera that you saw me through before, and I'll just show some devices. I doubt I'll get up and show my other rig, but just so that you and we'll have a little Q&A as far as like equipment too. You know, it's really easy to get into APRS. At least I think it is, and it's very fun and rewarding. We'll just go over some position reporting, just generally how APRS works, and then some of the fun messaging that you can do. And then, you know, really probably just Q&A after that, and just some general resources. At the end of this, I will go ahead and post it on my website. And I guess I don't know if there's a way I could ship it out to folks, but we'll figure it out. Especially if you put your call signs into the thing. So real quick, before we proceed, I guess I'll open up real quick. Anyone have questions before we get into the presentation? Hearing none, I'm moving forward. Back on mute. And I'm muting myself. So I'm just a background of myself. My name is Aaron Jones. My call sign is AG7GK. I first got into ham radio in 2016, kind of my son was a prepper. We watched too much Walking Dead, and he said, we need to be prepared for COVID-19 way back in 2016. Hopefully we're getting some chuckles out there. Anyway, so I did, and I actually had a long interest in doing ham radio because my grandpa, who he lived till he was like 101 in Yuma, was into ham and shortwave and got me a shortwave radio. So anyway, we're not going to go around the room. In fact, we've got our virtual room, and I see a lot of people renaming themselves. So that's very, very, very cool. And so that's neat. And thanks for the chats. Feel free to put your names and stuff in the chat, email addresses, things like that, if you feel comfortable with it. So what is APRS? It does stand for Automatic Packet Reporting System. And it was at one point Automatic Position Reporting System. And so it was early days, effectively before GPS. We won't go that far back, but Bob Bruninga, WB4 APR, did invent it. And, you know, it's been built out. I've only been using it for the last 4 years, frankly, but it kind of mixes many of the exciting things that I like, radio and GPS and mapping, GIS systems, and so there's a lot of great features to APRS. And most importantly, and we'll get into that here in the PowerPoint, is anybody that's a technician class licensee can participate in APRS. So, and if you have, we'll talk about hardware, but you don't really need any equipment that almost everybody doesn't already have. So as far as APRS frequencies goes, the nice thing about APRS is there's not a lot you need to remember. If you have an APRS radio, whoops, I muted myself again. If you have an APRS radio, if you're in North America, it would be 2 meters on 144.390 megahertz. And that's everywhere you go in Mexico, the United States, Canada. And I did test it when I was up in Vancouver during the summer, and it worked great. So I haven't gone anywhere else as far as around the world, but there are different frequencies. Let's see, got a little background noise. That worked. It's a little bit weird sometimes to mute the entire group for some reason. You have to have focus on the chat or something like that. I see someone ask me, are you sharing a screen yet? I still see the participant view. I am indeed sharing the screen, and I guess anybody else seeing my PowerPoint screen with APRS frequencies up?
Sharing's coming in just fine.
I see it, Aaron.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to put you guys back on mute, but it sounds like if you're having challenges, probably just need to go to another view. Woo! Lots of sound back there. All right, so it's pretty simple, and you can use custom frequencies. So if you wanted to have your own APRS little mini network, and I've spoken with someone who had kind of like a large youth camp out. They called it a trek, but it was out in the mountains. They set up APRS and used another one of the digital band plan frequencies somewhere below like 145 to do APRS, and were able to kind of have their own APRS, just local APRS network, and track the progress of the different youth groups. So that was very cool to see that process as well. Let's move on to the next one, and I think we'll have a good pause point. So APRS is, and I'm no networking expert, but it is a network of devices. And so you'll have a transmitter. I guess I could annotate. Let's see how that works. So you have your transmitter, and in this case, it shows a balloon. That's actually kind of cool because people will put the transmitters. Yeah, quick reminder about frequencies. So in the chat, we don't want to be transmitting our APRS packets on our national calling frequencies, our standard simplex frequencies. So you do want to stick on that 144.390 when you're in North America, even if I don't see a very often would you need the UK use case to move to a different frequency. And if you do, you're not going to talk to anyone else that's running APRS. So so when you're using APRS, it consists of a transmitter that can be a radio, with a TNC. We'll look at the equipment. It can also be other devices like phones and software. And then there's a series of digipeters, and that is really up to the local ham groups to determine whether the area has a digipeater, whether someone wants to donate hardware that's basically dedicated to digipeating. And so the concept is when this transmitter over here sends out their packet, they will have, there's some little indicators we won't dig into deeply here, but when the packet's heard, this digipeater is much like a repeater, will hear it and retransmit it. Now, it doesn't do it like a voice repeater where it does it simultaneously on an offset. It will hear it, decode the packet, and decide whether or not that packet should be digipeated. And there is a methodology, again, we won't get into that, but typically those things will be digipeated 2 times. And that way it'll be heard by hopefully all the devices in the area that you want to get to. For example, in the Phoenix area, that's going to be digipeated. It's pretty much anywhere, almost anywhere between Tucson and very far north, not quite to Flagstaff, but you can get your packets all the way around the valley in Arizona. And mileage may vary where you live. Frankly, I was up in Spokane, Washington, and it was I was very grateful for the infrastructure we had in the Phoenix area. Now, the distinction about just packet repeating or storing and forwarding, these are not stored. They're captured and then repeated right away. And there is a kind of like I mentioned, it will do it once or twice depending on what the transmitting device indicates. And the transmitting device will indicate what type of path it should take and whether it can be digipeated. If it is heard by what's called an eye gate, and often the digipeters and the eye gate will be one and the same, especially if you're using like a software-based APRS software. I could be digipeating and then also taking those packets. If I was an eye gate, which is an internet gateway, I would take this computer, as long as I'm connected to the internet, then I would take those packets and forward them on to what's called the APRS IS network. And that's a network of various internet connected servers. And these servers capture, so for all the eye gates, the internet gateways that are listening, they all connect to, there's a bunch of them. I couldn't say how many, I've never tried to enumerate them, but basically they're a bunch of computers that the eye gates connect to, and they make up the APRS IS. But what's interesting from there is, and this picture doesn't depict it, but an eye gate on the other side, so let's say I had this IS network, which is all internet servers, and I had another eye gate somewhere, let's say in Turkey, for example, I could be in Phoenix, transmit to a call sign that I know is in the country of Turkey. As long as an eye gate hears it, it'll go out over the internet, and if the person that has that call sign is connected, when I say connected, they have beaconed with an RF transmitter and been heard by an eye gate in Turkey, it will transmit out over RF radio frequency into the locality of where that person's transceiver is currently beaconing. And if he hears it, now he's got the message that I sent him. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but why don't I go ahead, and if you have any questions, oh, cool, we got some good stuff in the chat. If you have any questions, just unmute yourself. It'll be easier than me unmuting 54 people, but we'll pause there. But so if you have any questions, go ahead and come now. I don't know if I have to unmute everybody.
I don't think you do. If
Okay.
each individual can do themselves.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think I locked it down. Thanks. Was that Bayan?
No, that was Lynn, KJ4ERJ.
Cool. Thank you. Oh, so Lynn, he posted in the chat, if people didn't see it, 5,316 recently active iGates and 3,900 digipeaters. So did you get that off of APRS.fi?
No, my APRS IS32 client analyzes the APRS traffic all the time, and I have an instance running over here that has a full feed, so it gets everything.
Oh, so you're not just, so you're bringing in all packets from everywhere, not just what's kind of within the 200 or 200 kilometer or 200 mile radius that you.
Yeah. I don't mess with ranges on my filter. I just pull it off the full feed, both from FireNet and the backbone APRS IS servers. So that's a lot.
Yeah, that is. So for those who aren't familiar with, and we'll look at some of the software, I don't think we'll really get that deep, but basically when you run a piece of software that's communicating with the APRS network, you can say whether or not you want to know about everything that everybody is transmitting and being, reported to the internet, or you can say, I don't care about what happens on the other side of the world. Unless that packet is destined for my location, I'm going to ignore it, and I'm going to only look at packets that are transmitted and repeated, or, and I want to be clear, destined for my area. Because I could get a packet that came from the other side of the world, but it's destined for my location, and so I do want to hear it, and I might want to digipede it out. So someone commented, I wish the ratio of digis to iGate was higher. One-way iGates make it harder to do two-way messaging. I think, Lyle, I'm interpreting that as there's just not enough iGates allowing outbound messaging from the internet out back onto RF. Is that your view?
Yeah, that's the proliferation of one-way iGates means you can get a message out, but not necessarily receive one back.
Right. And when we go, and for those who aren't familiar with that, we will talk a little bit more about it when we get into messaging. But one of the challenges is, every ham operator that wants to could set up a digipeater or a digipeater and iGate or an iGate, and they can also say whether or not they want that internet gateway to only receive packets from RF and put it on IS, meaning the internet. They don't have to take packets from IS and put them back out onto RF, which effectively is like you said, it's only half the equation if you only stick it on IS. I can only assume that folks, there's some good comment, some are trying to kind of fill a reception void. I also saw a reasoning on one website related to one of the pieces of software we'll just look at that was concern about third-party communications. And certainly, that would be a concern. I personally am not concerned about it myself because I'd rather be able to see, be able to see the full power of being able to send transmissions across the world. And I will say, and I'm sure a few of us who are on APRS a lot may have been, I used the guy from Turkey, but I got contacted as kind of like a little DX contact, around the world contact. Now, of course, it was over RF and internet, but from a guy in Turkey, and he was on QRZ, and, that's kind of what he did all day. I thought that was kind of fun, right? And we had a little exchange, and then I specifically walked outside rather than just doing it over IS. I walked out and got on my HT and, just proved out that I could send a packet from my handheld radio directly to my iGate. It was within listening distance, of course. And, but it could have been digipeded, and it got to him and he got back to me. So that it's kind of fun. TA5AHO. Yeah. That was a comment. All right. So let me move to the next screen. I guess I should stop marking up and get back to my PowerPoint. So what, oh, look at that funky markup. Let's get rid of that, clear. All right. So, you know, equipment at the most simple, every single one of us that's on this Zoom clearly has a computer, tablet, or phone. And so all of us could be on APRS using our phone. There's a lot of software that is used, a lot of software that's used to, that's available on Android or iOS computers. I'll probably call on Joe to remind me of the one that he uses. When we get to the computer version, but you got to, or if you're going to do like an iGate, you'll typically run a computer. You'll need a radio if you want to get onto the RF portion of it, some cabling. GPS is not critical, but if you're moving around, you'll want it because that kind of defeats the purpose if you're not using a GPS to say where you are. That's kind of the cool thing is not only can I send messages as we've discussed, but I'll be tracking and people can see where I am. And then there's, of course, the TNC, and that's what enables packet radio. Now, it doesn't have to be a hardware TNC. There's a lot of really functional sound card based sound modems. I wouldn't say a lot. There's a few, but they will work with, you know, all kinds of sound cards. So we'll look at a couple of those, and I think I'll get into showing some. So at the simplest, if you're going to do APRS, and honestly, there's a couple pieces of software that I think every single amateur radio operator should probably hop on when they first get their license. Echolink, which is great because it works. There's tons of, you know, Echolink nodes. But from an APRS perspective, if you have an iPhone, there is Pocket Packet. That's the one that I've been using lately on my tablet and my iPhone. That basically, and if you are on APRS.fi, I'm always running a little Galaxy tablet called AG7GK-10 that's running the Android APRS Droid application. That's actually quite fully featured. You know, I've got, you know, one of the chats was that you got a MobiLink TNC. And so that's a little device. I'll actually show you a video of it down on the floor. Oh, there it is. Sorry. I've got a lot of equipment right here in front of me. Before I move on from there, and then I kind of went backwards in this list. APRS.fi is probably not the only place where you would look at APRS packets on the web, but to me, it's like the place. It's got a lot of features. It shows you a lot of details that from a troubleshooting perspective you can look at, and we'll kind of browse some of that as well here in a minute. Any questions about just to this point as far as software for phones or anything? Feel free to unmute yourself and shoot it out.
Yeah, I'll go a little bit public. I'm working on an Android client called APRS ISMO, and it's available if you are interested. There's a groups.io group called APRS ISMO that you can hit me up, and I'll tell you where to go download it.
And is this what's your call sign again?
This is KJ4ERJ.
Awesome. Do you mind putting that in the chat if you don't mind? I definitely want to hop on that group. All right, that's great. Thank you, KJ4ERJ. Yeah, so there's a lot of good software, and honestly, you know, I'm going to open this question up to the group since we're on. Now we'll wait till later, but I want to make a note. Yeah. All right. So that's just a question out to the group. I haven't really looked at it. Thank you for that link for APRS ISMO. Hopefully you'll get some users out of it and some good feedback. So let's see. Obviously, well, I wouldn't say obviously. That's not what I meant to say. I did say it, but there's a lot of I don't want to say commercial, amateur radio equipment that has APRS built in. They'll have a built-in, they'll call it a TNC, but I will warn you that it's basically used for APRS. Now, I think the Kenwood might actually be a real TNC where you could do other types of packet communications, but my Yaesu HT FT2D, which is an HT, and I'm going to show it right here. That is the wrong thing. So, oh yeah, I'm not even sharing my screen here. I gotta stop my share and then go. So this is the FT2D, and though that's a built-in APRS HT with APRS in it. I don't have like a Kenwood. I do have the FTM 100. If there's a Yaesu rep on here, I gotta say I don't love it from the perspective of it's not a true dual VFO or dual tuner radio. And so the FTM 100, when you're transmitting APRS, it's using, you kind of have to like what's called kind of like fast scan or watch your voice channels. And so that's lame. But the FT2D and the 400, FTM 400 actually have dual VFO. And so you could be transmitting and receiving APRS on one VFO or one tuner and then be talking on voice on another. And there's a cool feature where when someone's transmitting, they can actually switch that voice over to their preferred voice frequency, or you can switch to it. So some cool things. I don't really, other than I love my FTM, my FT2D, and I've kind of worked it out. There's some cool pre-built radios, but I'll be frank. I'm gonna be blunt. They can be kind of expensive too, right? Compared to what you can do with other devices. But I'll pause right there. Are there any comments or questions just generally about amateur radio? I would say some of the vendor-based devices.
I've got the D74 and the FT2D, and definitely better feature implementation of APRS on the D74, but it's just not very rugged. So inevitably, the Yaesu FT2D is what comes with me when I'm portable.
What would be the distinction, kind of briefly, for anybody kind of considering one of these devices on the D74? Is it just keyboard management or interacting with it?
So the big thing for me on the D74 is that you're able to access the TNC over Bluetooth. So I'm actually able to pair my Android phone with the Kenwood THD74 and use APRS Droid directly with the D74 with no other devices, which obviously makes the mapping and messaging interface way better. And you can't do that with the Yaesu products, unfortunately.
Yeah, nice. That's very cool. And the rep at HRO didn't tell me the distinction. But I didn't know what I was doing 4 years ago when I spent my $400. And I don't. By the way, I don't regret the FT2D, but this is one of the things where kind of having a group like this or online to kind of see the distinctions would be helpful if people are considering plunking down $250, or I think it's $374 for the 74A still.
Give you one more bit of feedback between the Yaesu 350 and 400s versus the Kenwood D710. Yaesu's APRS radios are receive only as far as software goes. You can hook them up to a PC, but you're only going to see the receive traffic. You cannot have the PC transmit through the 350 or the 400 unless you put an external TNC on it. With the Kenwood D710, it's a bidirectional interface to the TNC from the PC.
Oh, that's nice. So, and someone mentioned in the chat that it's an actual TNC. So if you were going to hook up to WinLink or other packet radio systems, it would be able to do that through its TNC mechanisms, right?
The Kenwood would, the Yaesus do not. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, now that said, I actually run a separate 2-meter radio. Well, it's a dual band radio, but a separate radio for APRS so that I can still have dual VFO. So I run an FTM 400 mobile as my voice comms radio, which gives me my preferred digital mode, which is Yaesu's digital system fusion and dual VFOs, and then a separate radio with the mobile link TNC so I can run APRS. And for me, that's the best possible setup, and it's only a slight incremental cost over having everything from a single radio.
Cool. Well, this was a good exchange, folks. Let's go ahead and we'll move on, and if other things come to mind, we can talk. But yeah, that's some great feedback. Hopefully, for those of you who are trying to figure out where to go, this will be helpful. So you can dip your toes in, but of course, the first place to start would be just to get an app that are free, or I don't know. I don't even know if they cost any money. They might be $2 or $4, but I think APRS Droid is free. Another option is to have a radio if you want to, include the RF portion. And I do have the picture of the ubiquitous Bofang. And just briefly, you would need a tablet or phone. I don't know why I have computer as far as this goes. You would need you don't have to have the APRS cable. That's actually legacy for my other digital discussions. In the example I'm going to show here, I'm actually going to show you mine. So you guys should be seeing, here is the MobiLink TNC device. And then they sell a connector cable for various radios, and it's hooked to the Bofang. And fairly simply, you just put the Bofang on 144390, pair the MobiLink to your APRS Droid. And so I had a old Samsung Note 3 that was, way past its prime, but worked great for APRS, and works great. I mean, I don't use it that much because I have about 5 other APRS devices that I use now when I am doing it, but it is a nice little setup. And so you can get away with, if you've got a Bofang and you want to spend $80 for the MobiLink, you can hook that up. Let's see, get back onto the share to move to the next screen. And so a little shout out here to Bayan, who's on, and I'm going to show some of his devices. So, there's also standalone trackers that either have a built-in radio or will connect to a radio and effectively are a TNC and have TNC built into them. And I'm not going to get into the guts if there's questions. Bayan, you're still on, right?
Yes, I am.
All right. So when we get to that point, we'll look at some questions. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So sorry to kind of switch back and forth, but I actually do have all 3 of these devices, and I'm embarrassed I just got so busy this afternoon with work. I kind of worked till like 6 o'clock, so I didn't get to set up. But I'm going to hook up these and play with them even further. But they're very, very cool. Let me share my screen here, my video. So this is the MicroTrack AIO. And so you've got your GPS built in and a TNC, and then this one's battery operated. And I'm assuming, the concept is that you can put it in I don't know if you would put this in one of those weather balloons, but somewhere protected like a boat or sailboat or you know, hiking, whatever adventure you're doing, and have tracking and other items. And someone commented there's a 50-watt version. This is 10 watts. And then similar to that, same guts, but really kind of geared towards, well, that is that backwards? Anyway, it says Bionics backwards, maybe it's forwards for you. But this
Yeah,
is,
it's not mirrored for us. It looks fine.
oh, okay. Oh, wait, there it is. I see it on my other screens.
It looks okay here too.
Yeah. I guess I should invert my own video screen, but yeah, I see it on my other ones. So this would be something you would hook right up to, you know, your car and mount it. And that's kind of what I'm looking at, because I want to just have something in my car at all times that I don't have to be dedicating a radio for.
Oh, okay. We'll see you later.
Yep, standing up for that gonna work.
Okay, let me turn my microphone off here.
Bye. And this is the Tiny Track 4. Also similar, but does connect to an external radio. And with the Tiny Track 4, you can hook up an LCD, and with a PS2 keyboard, you could send messages back and forth. So it's a full-fledged TNC and has full capabilities. Brian, do you have any comments or anything you want to spend a couple minutes on?
No, I'm not really much of a salesman myself, but I'm happy to answer questions if people have them.
Anyone got questions? I do have one, but I'll let people go first.
Yeah, this is Charles, W7CB. My question is, what kind of a battery life do you have on your AIO? According to what manufacturers said, you should be able to get 8 to 10 hours, and there is the option of turning down the wattage on that thing. But I found I was with alkaline batteries, I was only getting about maybe 2 hours max. So any comments on that? I'll go ahead and mute my bike.
Yeah, you should definitely getting a lot more than a couple hours on that thing. If it's configured correctly, what it does is it typically transmits for about 2 seconds, and then it shuts it down and even shuts the GPS off. So the current draw is almost nothing for the 2 minutes while it waits for the next transmission. So it draws, you know, very little power in between transmissions, and the transmissions are only, you know, about a half a second long. So you should be getting multiple days worth out of a set of batteries if things are set up properly.
As an afterthought on that, I did add a external dry cell 12-volt battery to that, and it lasts for days without having to charge the battery. So that's my 2 cents worth. I think it's a pretty good deal, and I really like it. I use it for events. Needless to say, with the current events nowadays, all of our events have been canceled out here on the West Coast. So it's been sitting in the garage pretty dormant right now. So anyway, I'll go ahead and bid you 73, and I'll mute my microphone.
Okay, my one comment I'd add is there's a feature in the configuration called power switch enable. And you want to enable the power switch. That will basically shut the thing down in between transmissions, and that should get you a lot of battery life back. I think when we did our initial tests, we were getting about a week's worth out of 8 alkalines, AA's. Anyway, back to Aaron.
That's awesome, Brian. My question for you was, what's the craziest or coolest application that you've seen someone apply one of your devices to? I know balloons are probably like old hat for you, but is there anything that comes to mind?
Well, the guy who actually created the AIO might be on here too. I don't know if Alan can unmute his mic. Unmute your mic if you can, Alan, and I'll see that you did that. But yeah, he is there. So you can, I think you can tell the story about the boat that we heard about. Go ahead, Alan. I'm not hearing you. Try one more time, Alan. We're not hearing anything. Okay, no audio. But I don't remember the story completely. I think Alan remembered it better than I did. But basically, some guy had a boat out on a lake that he had one of these AIOs in to track his boat, and something went wrong, and the boat sank and went down to the bottom of the lake with the AIO, you know, in as well. And I think it maybe even got inverted, and it was stuck down there for I don't remember, hours or days or something like that. But eventually, they were able to pull the boat back out of the water and pulled the tracker out of the water, and it was still working fine. So that was kind of cool. We also had one that went up in a balloon, I think, and I think there was a parachute failure on the way down, and the device impacted pretty spectacularly. But it was funny. They said it kept running even after that. So we've had we have heard some cool stories about people using that. And Alan says he has no audio.
That's super awesome, though. I mean, it's actually again, I'm not trying to be a salesman per se either, but I think it really does point out, you know, for certain applications, like a hardware solid state, you know, transmitter like these would be useful, especially in those areas where, you know, you don't want your $400 radio that's really kind of dual purpose utilized. And so, you know, that tracking of a device or a balloon, you know, that's really cool. That is neat to see. And honestly, it's funny because just in general, I one time, maybe I'm getting off on a tangent as far as stories go, but a few years back in 2012, my son's scout troop was one of those troops that you hear on the news where they get lost in the Four Peaks Wilderness outside of the Phoenix area. They're on national news, and you know, there's literally nothing more helpless feeling to be a parent and not know how to find, you know, your kid. And so, of course, you know, they were fine. They had the helicopter go out and find them. But I just thought, in this day and age, when we have tons of GPSs and devices like this, it just makes no sense not to have some, you know, security methodology. And so I went off and spent $600 on a Garmin InReach, and have paid for a service for that period of time. But I could have done, frankly, better for a free APRS network with messaging and tracking. And of course, I would have spent some hardware, but it would have been hardware that was useful. So anyway, I just think APRS is great from so many different viewpoints. And I'm losing. Let's see. I am not finding my chat. There it is. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and keep moving because we are 45 minutes in, and I didn't really tell you guys how long this was be. I plan on a couple hours, but we'll get to the juicy stuff real quick instead. Without getting into too many details, you know, you could do all this with a computer and a sound card and external TNC. There's software for Linux called Disaster. There's APRX. There's yet another APRS client, Yak. There's Windows APRS IS32. There's UI View, which is the one that then 2QOJ posted into the, and then I didn't put it in, there's a Pinpoint APRS. And I'd be embarrassed if anybody that's a big user of that was on here and I excluded that. I didn't mean to. I didn't get around to wrapping up my Windows-based software on this. I have actually personal experience with APRS IS32. I've run UI32. I've run Pinpoint APRS. Very nice looking. I'd like to see some more features as far as like message handling. It does do message handling, but there's a lot of awesome features that APRS IS32 from a Windows perspective is you can really too many features, frankly. I think UIView 32 as well, UIView as well. But you know, I'm not going to go into the features of APRS, but I think I do have some bullets that we'll look at here coming up. So for some reason, I didn't show it there. I guess I have two versions of the, oh, I see. I put down a build. So, you know, I used a signal link on one of my devices. So I had a Yaesu 2980 2-meter mono band. This is showing my ICOM, but my ICOM has a built-in sound card. But same concept. If you hooked up a device, whether you're using a signal link or a radio that has a built-in sound card, like some of the ICOMs or the some of the Yaesus that have them that can connect over USB or similar. You can run software in Windows, which is basically called a sound modem. I'm not referencing it here, but it is AG7GK. Someone correct me if I'm off base in the chat. It's a guy out of somewhere in Russia that makes a great sound modem software, and basically it will do the packet decoding, and then you can have the software you know interact with that, so you can transmit and receive packets. So you can use it for WinLink, you can use it for any AX25 type packet work. UZ7HO, yeah, thank you. So I have successfully run APRS 32 for many months with that. So what are some of the fun things we can do? These are just some of the kind of the more common ones. There's a lot of things that you can see in APRS. One of the kind of newer ones, I don't know how long it's been around. I saw it popping up about a year ago, is the SMS gateway. And so let me describe what these gateways mean. So if I have a device and I'm connected to the APRS network, whether it's my phone or I've got a RF, you know, radio frequency based device that can interact with APRS, I can direct a message to a gateway. And basically think of it's as if I was sending a message to someone's call sign, and that call sign is called SMS GTE. But it's a special call sign that they, you know, they'll receive at that call sign, but then they take it and do something with it. And so this gateway will interact with other network systems like WinLink or email, or in this case, text messaging, SMS messaging. And so one of the things you can do is you can, on your HT, if you were out in the desert and didn't have cell service, but you did have an APRS iGate or a digipeater that could get to an iGate, you could direct a message. It would go to SMS gate. You would put your phone number with an @ symbol in front of it. I'm not going to show exactly how to do that unless we want to do that afterward. We can play radio, as Doug says, and I will end up sending to that gateway my SMS messages, and then they will in turn put that out onto the cellular network to the receiving phone number. Conversely, the receiving phone can respond, and that will come back out to my radio, because it will put my call sign in the message so that when they respond, it knows where to go. I'm probably murdering that a little bit, but I've certainly played with it on numerous occasions. And I will warn you guys, when you send messages, anybody, just like all ham radio rules, none of it's encrypted and anybody can see it. So I've never seen anything weird come across my messaging, but I'll show you when I get on my Yak client on a Raspberry Pi computer. I'll show you that I see all the messages that are in my locale within 100 kilometers. So other things you can do is you can email, same concept. You just direct it to email to, and you put an email address and a short message. The WinLink, I will be, just to warn you, it's similar, but you actually have to interact with this gateway and put your WinLink password, or and it's a little wacky. You gotta like, it's semi-encrypted, and it's got some numbers that you invert for your letters. I can't remember exactly how to do it. I kind of had to like read the guide, so I guarantee I'm not going to do it when I'm in the desert. But you can get a message out over WinLink, which would then enable an email or to a WinLink user as well. For those of us that are on JS8 call, which is I'm not sure if it's the right way to put it, as a derivative of FT8 protocol. It basically took the open source version of FT8 and made it a keyboard to keyboard messaging software, but utilizing kind of that power of FT8. And the developer of that's built in, interaction with the APRS network as well. So if I had a computer and I was out, in anywhere, nowhere land, and could communicate over HF, I could send messages outbound over HF to any receiving JS8 call station that was connected, and those that are hearing my properly formatted message could distribute it to APRS, and that could include stating where I'm at or sending a message. And anyway, I'll probably stop there. Any questions about some of these interactions as far as messaging goes? Anyone have questions or concerns? Come now. And don't forget to mute yourself. Unmute yourself, sorry. All right, not hearing anything. So I'm going to go ahead and do a couple demos. And I would basically state that at this point, the rest of what I'm going to show is mostly demo stuff. So if anybody needs to bail, you can. I do have some useful websites that will just kind of briefly go over. And then I think it's really show and tell. Let me go ahead and just kill the PowerPoint off here. But in the PowerPoint, APRS.phi, to me, it's kind of where I go when I'm troubleshooting. There's some good presentations out there. I mean, if you look for APRS presentation, everybody's got one. A lot of great ones. I really liked this one. Of course, there's some documentation, many hundreds of pages of APRS details. They have some of the other things that you can do. For example, if I'm on a radio and I want to find out who in the area, like if I'm communicating with the digipeater, I could say, hey, who are you hearing? And there's a command that you can send from your device, your radio, to any digipeater or iGate or radio. And if they've got the full APRS functionality implemented, they will either respond with who they're hearing or who they've heard. And I haven't tried relaying, but just some cool commands that you can find out what's going on around you. You can get bulletins, you can post bulletins, you can create static objects. I'll use a great example from N2QOJ. He has some very important objects. One of the most important being our Friday Fuddruckers lunch location. And I'm always happy to see when I get on my network that that the Friday Fuddruckers lunch is going to happen. Sadly, they're not happening right now. So I'm not sure if that object is killed off or it's still there just as in memoriam until we can get back together. And let's see, why don't I go ahead and do some show and tells, and then just, raise your hand or just chime in, hey, Aaron, can you, pause or something. So what I wanted to show is, it looks like I'm showing myself right now, but I am actually going to share my screen, but I'm not sharing the PowerPoint. And I'm gonna hop on my Yak client yet another APRS client, just to show you kind of what APRS, like what one client looks like. Honestly, they've all got a little bit of different format, but in general, the primary thing you'll be seeing is you'll get into your computer or client where you're running it, and you'll see a map. And in this example, I'm seeing the map of my neighborhood, and if you can see here, I was driving my Jeep 7 hours ago, and that was the last beacon that I'm showing. And then, nice job, KJ4ERJ. You guys can see that in this side of the screen, it's a little small, but you can see that I got a text, a message from KJ4ERJ, and that went to my AG7GK-7. So let me just describe what just happened. Now, KJ4ERG, were you actually sending that over from your client or from like an RF-based radio?
That one originated right from my client on the internet, hence the -AL SSID.
Okay.
Would not be legal over the air.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. And guys, there's frankly, there is meaning behind what they call the SSID. I think there's a convention, but honestly, I'm not sure exactly how rigid people are about following it. And you can look it up. I thought I put it in my PowerPoint, but I don't think I got around to actually copying and pasting it in. And frankly, I stole it somewhere, but it's in APRS 101. Most of your pieces of software, any of your devices will say, hey, when you're configuring your, oh, great. It's in the chat that when you're configuring your client, it'll say, what type of device and what kind of icon. So you can see right here, just from my screen, if you're seeing my screen, my Yaesu, and it's kind of hard to see, is I just did like a Y. And then I've got a little Jeep for my FT100. Here's my tablet. I'm using the phone icon. It's not actually a phone, it is a tablet, but that's the one that's always on. Let's see, that's my Pocket Packet on my iPad. And then here's my Digipeater iGate that I've been running for quite some time, that we're going to put up here if you're in Phoenix area in Usery. And that is what we're looking at from the screen. We're looking at AG7GK-2, which I might make one. I haven't decided. But anyway, it will be running this Raspberry Pi, and I want to show this to you. So let me grab an example here. So a couple of years ago, I spent $80 on the TNC Pi. Let's see, I'll stop sharing so it goes back to my video. And you can look up TNC Pi, and it runs, I mean, it's a TNC that runs on top of a Raspberry Pi. This happens to be a Raspberry Pi 2. The one that we're looking at on my computer, or sorry, the Raspberry Pi is a TNC Pi running on a Raspberry Pi 3 B+. It doesn't require much, and the TNC acts obviously as the terminal node controller for sending and decoding the packets. And so I bought it like 4 years ago, never did anything with them, and then found a great use, a very good use, which is to run APRS full time. And so any questions just about, what you're seeing as far as software goes? Anybody ever wanted to run it and didn't because they didn't know how to start, or concerns, things like that? And if you're talking, you're on mute, so make sure you unmute. So I've heard at least a couple people that are running software. But if you can run APRS software, again, just in digipeater mode or just as a one-way iGate. So I think at one point I had one of those little RTL SDRs when I first got into ham radio, and it was connected to a Raspberry Pi, and it decoded packets and ran what was called Direwolf, still out there, very heavily maintained. At least it appeared to be. The reason why I landed on Yak on this piece of software personally was because it had an active user community and an active developer who one responds to questions and is still releasing fixes and modifications. So when I first installed Yak, I had trouble with outbound from APRS IS out to RF. But what it ended up being was I didn't have enough delay on my TNC, and it was sending, but devices weren't decoding it. At least my HT wasn't decoding the packets. I think it received a packet and then retransmitted with almost no delay. And so people that are better at packet probably know the nuances of that, but I just modified the delay and it worked great. So there's a lot of other features, but this is what I wanted to show as far as software. Oh, cool. Got a couple shout outs. Thank you guys. So, anything that I'm monitoring for now, I think I have a filter of 100 kilometers, but as KJ4ERJ said, he could monitor the entire IS. And so all the messages are there. And so any weird things you say or do are visible to someone if they cared to see it. Let's look at one item that I do like to use, and it's been useful in troubleshooting. Like if you aren't running APRS, if you're not running your APRS client to look at the entire breadth of APRS packets, you can always get on to aprs.fi. And so this is FI stands for Finland. It's a domain name from Finland. I don't know the guys, but they've got some servers that are fairly powerful, and they run mapping, and they obviously monitor all the packets as well, and they expose that information. So it knows I'm here because I've logged in. But here's what I was referring to about an object. So one of the things you can do if you're running one of the pieces of software is you could create an object and say how long it stays, and you just keep basically your software will recreate it, and that way you create a little landmark. And so here's an example. We have our lunch at Fuddruckers, and it's at 11:30 a.m. and if you're going to come, we're going to be listening on 146.500. So that's kind of a really great example of an object that would be utilized for advertising some ham related function. We do a monthly kind of field day here in the Arizona, central Arizona area, called Radios Under Sunshade. It's my favorite day of the month as far as like radio stuff goes. And so often we will publish where we're going to be. For example, I like to go to a park over near my house, and I'll publish, hey, this is where my Radios Under the Sunshade is going to be. And kind of a temporary object. So some of the cool things. Now, imagine Google Maps. This is leveraging Google Maps, but I can look up any call sign. Now, I'm nerdy and I'm looking at my own call sign, but I'm going to go ahead and look and see where all my call signs that have ever been broadcast or transmitted and received onto the network. And I'm going to look at the one where I got some texts, and so I'm going to see AG7GK-7, and I'm going to dig into that and see some information. So there's a few screens that that are nice when you're using APRS.fi. For those that want to see it, like who heard you, who did you kind of, what I call, it's not the right word for it, but who did I affiliate with? Who heard me and is brokering my packets? And so you can see that right here. Here's AG7GK-7, and AG7GK-2 is who transmitted my packets to the IS network. And I can see those packets by looking at either the raw packets, and I can see the ones that I got. I can see my messages that people have sent to me. And so when I have problems, when I'm troubleshooting, I'll look and see if like a packet didn't decode. So here's some great examples. I received some texts from some, some messages from some folks on this call here. So here's KC7IPY, and then the greetings from Florida. And so anyway, this is kind of where I'll look, and it does keep a fairly long history. Looks like 14 days, it says. So especially when I was troubleshooting my interactions with JS8 call, there's very specific structure when you're using that, and you have to have like 9 characters from the beginning of the call sign before you put additional information. That's all in the definitions in the APRS definitions, but that you'll look at that to troubleshoot, well, was the packet malformed, etc. So I know I'm getting a little bit deep, but just some of the things that you might look at, some of the tools and tips and tricks that might be utilized. One of the main things I look at in running my iGate is, who am I hearing? And if I'm having problems, so there's some graphs that I can see the packets that I've heard, the packets that I heard from other people, whether I heard them first or was there, because every radio that's an iGate is potentially hearing the same packets. And so they all get duplicates, but only one of them actually is the kind of the primary person. So I don't know the rules behind that, but clearly I am hearing some packets that might not have gotten through or otherwise. And there are some
break on you there.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, thanks.
There are no rules in the APRS IS. There's no intelligence. There's no routing. It's first come is the one that gets distributed. So if 2 iGates copy the same packet, whoever delivers it to the network first is the one that gets propagated. And that's the one that gets to APRS.FI first is the one that's going to show up in all of his analysis. So it's a flat out race. And in fact, the IS servers are all interconnected in a way that different people can see different iGates for the same packet, depending on where the duplicates finally found each other and got suppressed in the network. So a lot of people think there's intelligence in the IS network. There isn't.
Gotcha. So it's just whoever's hearing it, and as long as you're, again, I don't want to use the word connected, but as long as I've, and my whole point is, if I've got my HT out somewhere, I want to make sure that I've beaconed and that an iGate heard me, so that if someone tries to connect to me, send a message to me, they know which iGate's gonna hopefully digipede it out, and then there's digipeders in between to get it to me. But in theory, multiple iGates could transmit that packet as well, right? If they are a 2-way iGate.
Absolutely,
or would it only,
correct.
Yeah.
Whatever iGate thinks it heard the destination station recently, and whatever its definition of close enough is all, they're all going to transmit the message to the RF if they're transmit enabled.
Okay, gotcha. Any questions, guys, on just using APRS, kind of the network? All right.
I'll
Maybe
throw,
I'll.
I'll throw a
Oh,
use
go
case
ahead.
out for you.
Yeah.
My wife is also a licensed ham, so her van tracks with an APRS tracker. It's just stuck under the seat and interfaces to a Nuvi radio on the dash. So when she inevitably locks her keys in the van and calls me up and wants me to come rescue her, I just pull out my APRS client and look at exactly where she is in the parking lot and drive right to the van.
Yeah. That's exactly the use case that I am noodling as well. There's a good chat comment, but yeah. And my thought was my sons who love to use my Jeep. I wish I'd made the rule that they don't get to drive it unless they've got their ham license. So they're all kind of on the middle ground there of getting set up with their licenses. So,
but I do have a funny one for you. When we first got into APRS, my son and a couple of his friends were watching my wife and I drive across the state of Florida at night coming home. And we actually stopped out in the middle of nowhere to get out of the van and look at the gorgeous stars with no lights around us. We were only stopped for about 5 minutes before the cell phone rang. It was my son wondering if we drove off the road or why did we stop out in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, that's funny.
So there are reasons you might not want to be tracked.
Yeah.
But you can always just turn off the radio and you disappear off the network.
That's neat. I one time, just for fun, was coming from California, and I had my FT2D with a little small kind of window antenna. I wanted to see how well it worked, and honestly, there was almost no area between Santa Barbara, California, over the I-10 where I didn't see my packets get picked up. There were a couple blind spots, but I think Joe said there's digipeaters or at least some peak-based eye gates and digipeaters that are on high mountains all around Arizona. I don't know, is it that way in Florida where it's got a pretty good infrastructure of APRS eye gates and digipeaters?
We've got a good infrastructure where in the populous areas, but we do not have the advantage you have out there. Florida's max elevation is like 300 feet. So we have no mountaintop digipeaters. So we have a lot of holes when you're driving around. Just between my house here in Palm Bay on the east coast of Florida, driving to Orlando, I go through 2 APRS holes where I just drop off the map and for about 15, 20 miles before I get picked up on the other side.
Gotcha.
Well, that's
Question.
like running up to Salt Lake from Phoenix, especially if you take the old 89 like the way we do. Lots and lots of dead areas up there. But some of the mountaintops, phenomenal range. I've had 200-mile shots before with it.
Yeah, and you can kind of see I'm zooming in and out, so I apologize for that. But there's a couple of red squares. These are the squares that are indicating someone's their location that I've heard, and their mountain peaks. And I mean they're a good 30-40 miles away here from where I am, and obviously I'm hearing them here in the valley, but you get out into some of the broader open areas in Arizona and you can still hear them. So there's this great network of digipeating here, but yeah, you're never going to be perfectly covered, especially if you're in the one problem I saw, I think, in Washington, in East Washington State, was it was just too many mountains, and so there wasn't. It was just a lot of interference, I think. But it was like a dead zone to me. There was almost. I mean, I did hear packets, but it wasn't like here where it's almost saturated. So one question I had to the peanut gallery: has anyone utilized a software where they actually? So there was a comment about store and forward. So specifically, the packets that we have, when someone sends me a packet, if I'm not ready to catch it, it'll be on APRS for up to 14 days. But most of the clients that I've utilized don't go out and check to see if someone sent me something. It's not like it's there like an email waiting for me to check it. Has anyone seen or utilized an APRS client where it almost acted like a store and forward? Anyone in the peanut gallery?
I've
I'd
seen
be
the
interested.
opposite, right? So many clients like APRS Droid, the Kenwood radios, the Yaesu radios will retry a certain number of times until they get an ACK, and then they'll time out after that X number of tries. I think it's 7 on Yaesu, and I also think it's 7 on APRS Droid, where it waits for an acknowledgement back from that station.
Yeah. And I think I can show an example of that ACK I sent. So I sent from, so here's me, AG7GK2, which is this screen. I sent one direct to phone, and then my phone ACKed it, meaning it acknowledged the message. And so then my, my digipeater, my iGate did not try retransmitting once it got the ACK. And then when I transmitted from my phone to the digipeater, I don't see the ACK, but I know that as soon as I do, I'll see it on my phone, on my radio. It doesn't actually show the ACK. It will show, I think you can see the raw, but it'll just indicate in the FT2D, it'll show that there's like a star. And if it's retrying, it'll show the count of the retry that it's on. Yeah, an asterisk indicates that it was acknowledged by the receiving station. So I actually, that's why I leave my APRS Droid up. I don't know if anybody that's doing that or uses it, but the little tablet I have just runs all the time. And since I have multiple SSIDs or station IDs, it monitors for all of them. So it's kind of like a little mailbox for me. I don't check it very often, but that way, if there's something that came in that was meant for one call sign or another of one of my call signs, it'll one of my SSIDs, it'll see it and show it, whether it's for -2 or -7 or -9. So that was my answer to not having kind of basically a mailbox for messages. So you do have to consider that these are lossy. If you're not there ready to listen, you may not get it unless you go out and proactively check APRS. So you want to elaborate on the eavesdropping? Oh, I see. I'm eavesdropping for any messages on a given call sign is what the statement was, right?
Yeah, APRS IS32, I see on your YAC client, there's a little checkbox there that says show every message, not just addressed to this station.
Yeah.
I call that eavesdropping. You can enable that in APRS IS32 as well. And it has the feature where you can enable it to listen to all messages addressed to any SSID of your call sign. And that way I have my desktop client sitting there catching all my messages, no matter who sent them to which of my stations, be it my D700, my D74, my D72, my cell phone, whatever. They all are actually captured by my desktop client, so that when I do get back in the shack, I can see what I might have missed out on the RF side.
Yeah, that's very cool. So if I'm not mistaken, APRS IS32, it's not maintained anymore though, right?
That is not true. The general release is from 2012, but the development release is from 2019. I just keep putting so many new features in it that I never lock one down before I get on to the next one. So I have
so
to take it and make it a new general release. I'm going to do that very, very soon now, and then start putting in some new features, as you alluded to earlier, there's not enough features in there already.
no, on the contrary, there's tons of awesome features. If I was running my Windows machine, that is the client I would be running. I ran that, and I'm not just trying to blow sunshine. I did run that for a couple of months, but I used that same Windows machine as a just like a FL Digi for our digital nets on Sunday nights, and now I don't have it even connected up. I'm just running on my Pi. But so you actually are maintaining that code then?
Yeah,
for APRS IS. Okay.
I'm
awesome.
And it runs under Wine perfectly fine.
Okay. Cool. Interesting. However, I've not been able to figure out how to get Wine to run on Raspberry Pi. I guess there was a piece of software that would do the i386 architecture.
I'd be worried that the Pi just doesn't have the horsepower to really handle Wine and putting Windows on top of the whole thing.
Yeah. Cool. Well, guys, frankly, you're a legend, just like Joe K1JT. Frankly, anybody that's making software out there for us is thank you. So that's awesome. Anyone have questions generally about APRS on other topics that have sparked questions? How to get started? I'm just gonna kind of open it up to Q&A. All right. Thanks, KI7YRZ. I got a little presentation, so thank you. A little shout out there. So, sorry, I'm looking at my screen so that I can type it. A little response. So I've got a chat here about MOT, one of our local repeaters. Okay, so Joe, you indicated that UI View is not supported. So KB7JJG, can you elaborate in your comment in the chats regarding APRS on is that just the frequency that they're utilizing?
I don't know if you can hear me. I'm having some problems with this. Okay, yeah, there's we were talking about the VHF APRS, but there's also a couple of UHF APRSs, and there's also actually a allotment for a 220 APRS in our Arizona plan. So there are some places that you can experiment with if you want to play around and not be on. I'm the MOT 11, which is on Mount Ord. I'm hearing up here in I guess I'm southeast Yavapai County, up here by Arcosani and Mayor, Camp Verde, up in that area. So I'm hearing them there. So, and can communicate with them. So just FYI, there's more.
Cool.
There's more than just the VHF out there.
Okay. So are you guys seeing, Joe's commenting, kind of elaborating that there's a lower, I'm assuming the collision rate for UHF is that there's just less traffic. So for those who aren't really well-versed or haven't been listening to APRS, because it's one frequency, even though the packets are like 1 second long or less, there's just a lot of constant chatter, especially here in Phoenix. And that's one of the things, if I was to do another presentation talking about, let's say, like the new N paradigm is what they call it. Basically, how do you expire packet transmissions so that they don't keep repeating and just going round and around being digipeated over and over again. They expire after being digipeated more than twice typically. So conceptually, there is a lot of extra noise. I don't want to call it noise. It's just your packets being heard over and over again until they stop resending. So, has anybody utilized UHF? I've never run a UHF one. I mean, is there a lot of traffic?
I'm just speaking on, it's definitely a lot quieter. I wish we would do 9600 baud on UHF here, but I haven't found a 9600 baud digi yet.
I got a comment.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Joe, N2QOJ. Yeah, I tell a lot of people about the UHF 440, the 445 frequency, because if you're using an FTD 1 or 2 or 3 or Kenwood D74 with 4 to 5 watts output in the valley with an external antenna on your car, and you want to beacon that, you're going to have a great chance of hitting W7MOT UHF digipeater and iGate, much more so than competing with mobiles who are pumping 40, 50, 60 watts out on a good gain mobile antenna. So I've used it many times going up to the rim with a Baofeng and an Android device as the TNC, and also the FTD1, and you've got a much, much higher success rate with the 445. The problem is not all metropolitan areas in the country have 445.925 digipeaters. We're lucky that we have it here, but it's not prevalent or ubiquitous throughout the country. That's the only drawback. But if you have it, it's a wonderful tool. Your HT is going to be much more successful competing than with mobiles on 2 meters.
Yeah, good point. Interesting. And one of the worst things I've heard is when someone's got like and I don't know if anybody's experienced this, but it's almost like I guess it doesn't matter, but it's just a constant, like someone's got their PTT going, and it's just always on. It doesn't do anything, but I don't know, if it ends up resulting in some level of RF interference, even if it's not transmitting audio. I'll catch that here and there here in the valley. Haven't recently, but I did have it one time where I wasn't hearing any packets, and I honestly I think it was someone's thing was keyed down until it burned out or whatever. But I don't know if anybody's experienced that. So there was a comment in chat. In the chat, shoot. I just got distracted with another comment too. About 9600 baud. So has anyone on the call on this used or seen the higher speed baud rate utilized?
I've tried. Can't find any digis that will receive my packets when I do 9600 though. Yeah,
I would assume it's kind of like the UHF. It's probably a little bit more of a side exception case. I think most of the devices that you buy, like from Yaesu, et cetera, will allow it, but I have not tried it. And when I first did it, it didn't work, obviously. And I read the manual finally. So let's see. I'm happy to stay on if anyone has any questions. I think we're getting most of the people to drop off, and I'll probably, from N2QOJ, I'll probably kill the presentation here at the 9:30 mark. But I do appreciate everybody joining. It was nice to see people from all over the country, and the valley here, and just kind of have this opportunity. So yeah, thanks for joining. Good comment from ERJ was, has anyone interacted? Well, I mean, he indicates that you can interact with the ISS. Has anyone actually, sent APRS over satellite or to the ISS? I'd be interested to hear. Oh, okay. So this is to get a report of when Okay, so I can just send. I'm going to do that right now, guys. I'm going to use my HT. Let's see. And I put ISS in the call sign. And just any character. So I should see that pop up. Oh, very cool. So, oh, you're not seeing my screen. I will share it. So what I did is I, in my, any APRS client could have been you know, my phone or otherwise. I sent a message to this address, ISS, and I see N2QOJ did the same. And then it responded, whatever the gateway was, with the next pass of the ISS. So 7 hours and 10 minutes, I should be able to see the ISS in my location. That is very cool. Anyone else done fun little things like that where, you know, I mean, in theory, there could be all kinds of little fun Easter eggs out there on the APRS network that, you know, you have to know about or be publicized. Anyone done anything else along those lines? Joe found his wife. That's good. Great. We're glad.
I'll just mention that you don't need a digipeater to do APRS. So I do a lot of 4x4 trails, overlanding, and it's really handy that APRS runs both simplex and with a digi on the same frequency. So even when we don't have digi coverage, I can still get beacons and messages from my buddies that are in close proximity.
Well, it's funny. That's actually like what really got me excited about it. It was that conceptually, I would be able to have, well, I mean, one of my weird little goals when I started 4 years ago is I want to be able to do everything I can do with a computer without having to have a computer. And so the idea was with APRS is I could send a message just with my radio. And, you know, that was the main point is if I'm hanging out with my buddy, if I'm hunting, he's got a radio and I've got a radio, and instead of spending $600-700 on, you know, the Garmin, I think they used to call them the Rhinos, to find out how far he was away from me, I could have an APRS and it would show me the same thing, where he is, what direction he is from me, and his distance. And then I could text him. So yeah, that's a great example of APRS itself doesn't require any infrastructure other than your radio, right? Hopefully some of you guys that have not, you know, gotten on APRS will consider it, and you know, we'll see some, you know, some activity. Thank you everyone for the good feedback. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up, but I've always got AG7GK running and would love to help anyone out if they have questions about, you know, getting set up, and maybe you're just not comfortable bringing it up on, you know, in front of people, or just need to know where to start. So feel free to reach out, and I think there's a lot of great people around out there that would be happy to kind of help you see where you are now and get to the next. So thanks for joining, and thanks for the feedback and commentary, and hope to see you around and on the air. AG7GK 73 and clear. I said clear, but I actually didn't hang up yet, so that's going to work out.